For generations, educational technology was loud, physical, and entirely reliant on human muscle. A teacher wrote the lesson, a teacher delivered the lesson, and a teacher erased it to start over. Even when screens entered the classroom, the dynamic didn't really change. Devices like television sets acted as one-way funnels, broadcasting information to rows of students who couldn't talk back to the machine. Fast forward to early digital tools, and the burden was still on the human. Electronic calculators and early computers were passive instruments. They required a person to input the logic step by step to get an answer. Despite decades of hardware upgrades, the core educational bottleneck survived intact. Human labor was still driving a one-size-fits-all delivery system, which routinely left teachers burned out and struggling to meet every student's individual needs. That bottleneck is what makes generative AI and adaptive learning models so disruptive. These systems aren't waiting for a human to input every single command. This is a table from a systematic review of AI in distance education, categorizing recent research themes. Theme 3 specifically tracks human-AI interaction. The research defines these systems as active participants, behaving more like co-teachers than background software. If algorithms can step into the roles of co-teachers, tutors, and administrative assistants, what does the daily reality look like for the flesh and blood humans sharing that classroom? To understand the future of education, we have to look past the software itself and examine how it forces students, teachers, and principals to change their behavior. Modern AI systems build adaptive pathways by tracking a single learner's performance. The software analyzes interactions in real time. The immediate benefit is hyper-personalization. The system adjusts task difficulty, tailors materials, and offers feedback at a scale a human teacher simply can't match. But this introduces a serious point of friction. When a machine constantly guides a student to the right answer, there is a real risk they surrender their cognitive autonomy, relying on automated judgments instead of developing their own critical problem-solving skills. Then there is the psychological toll of continuous evaluation. AI-driven proctoring tools and constant data tracking create an environment of perpetual surveillance, which researchers have flagged for causing significant student anxiety. For the learner, the trade-off for a perfectly customized curriculum is existing in a state of continuous automated measurement. For teachers, the immediate appeal of AI is administrative relief. Algorithms can generate endless practice questions, automate formative assessments, and clear hours of routine grading. By offloading those routine tasks, the primary job of the teacher shifts. They move away from basic information delivery, focusing entirely on complex pedagogical decision-making. This creates a completely new classroom dynamic. Educators are now responsible for structuring and managing human-AI collaboration, teaching students how to safely interact with chatbots to build arguments and verify facts. At the same time, they face the exhausting challenge of maintaining academic integrity. Teachers have to constantly evaluate whether an assignment reflects authentic student knowledge or if it's just polished AI-generated output. AI doesn't replace the teacher. Instead, it forces a demanding pivot from a subject matter expert to an algorithmic mediator and ethical guide. Zooming out to school leaders and administrators, AI is stepping in to process vast amounts of institutional data, draft communications, and identify macro trends across the entire student body. One of the most powerful capabilities is predictive analytics. This chart illustrates a predictive model forecasting student disengagement. By analyzing behavioral patterns, the system can identify at-risk individuals months before they actually fail a class. But these early warnings come with heavy ethical friction. Administrators are now legally and morally on the hook for the outputs and the inevitable errors of these predictive algorithms. School leaders are losing sleep over institutional risks, from intellectual property disputes over AI-generated teaching materials to the grave danger of algorithmic bias deepening existing demographic inequities in grading and discipline. School leadership now requires governing the ethics of non-human decision-makers, adding a massive new burden on top of traditional administrative duties. This brings us to the new reality of the educational ecosystem. The modern school functions as a socio-technical system, an environment where social dynamics and network architecture are indistinguishable from one another. Researchers warn that deploying AI based solely on its raw processing power actively hinders student success. If the technology isn't explicitly grounded in established learning theories, it fails to actually teach. Institutions need to respond by building comprehensive governance frameworks. That means setting strict policies that prioritize algorithmic transparency, student data privacy, and proportional consent before a tool ever enters a classroom. To make that work, schools have to heavily invest in professional training. Teachers and administrators need dedicated time to develop AI literacy so they can handle these collaborative tools safely and effectively. Ultimately, the future of school technology relies entirely on our ability to intentionally design and protect the human relationships that surround it.